The USS Liberty came out of hyperspace like a white arrow cutting through black cloth. Space around them was full of twisted metal and floating debris from ships that had tried to fight here before. Some pieces were still glowing from weapon, fire, that had happened days ago. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge looking at the main screen. What he saw made his stomach feel cold. The hegemony fleet was huge, much bigger than the reports had said. Their ships looked like they were made from nightmares. "Count them," Jake said to his tactical officer. Commander Pete Williams worked at his computer station, his fingers moving fast over the controls. Pete was a good man who had served with Jake for 8 years. His face was always calm, even when things got scary. 12 heavy cruisers, 46 destroyers, and over 200 smaller ships, Pete reported. They have spread out across the whole system. It looks like they are taking everything apart piece by piece. Jake nodded. The hegemony was not just destroying things. They were harvesting them. Every piece of metal, every bit of technology, every source of power was being taken and turned into more hegemony ships. It was like watching cancer grow. The enemy ships were ugly and wrong. They looked like someone had taken normal spaceships and twisted them into bad shapes. Black metal, arms stuck out in all directions. Strange lights moved under their skin like veins full of poison. Some of the ships were so big, they had their own gravity. "Sir, we are getting a message from the lead enemy ship," said Communications Officer Amy Foster. She was young, maybe 23, with red hair and freckles. Her voice stayed steady, even though her hands were shaking. The main screen changed to show a face that was not quite human and not quite machine. It had metal parts mixed with what might have been flesh once. Its eyes glowed with blue light that hurt to look at. "Unknown vessel," the thing said in a voice like grinding gears. "You will surrender now or be destroyed. Your ship appears to have very weak weapons. Fighting us would be pointless and wasteful." Jake stepped forward so the enemy could see him clearly. He kept his back straight and his voice calm. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Liberty. We are here to tell you that your war ends now." The hegemony commander tilted its head like a confused dog. "Scanning your vessel now. Results. Show insufficient firepower for meaningful resistance. Your biological thinking appears damaged. Prepare to be boarded and converted." Around the Liberty, the black ships began to move. They did not hurry. They moved like hunters who knew their prey could not escape. The smaller ships spread out in a big circle while the heavy cruisers powered up their main guns. Jake could see weapon ports opening all over the enemy ships. Some of the guns were bigger than the Liberty's entire bridge. Energy began to build. Up inside them, making the space around the hegemony fleet glow with dangerous light. "Sir, they are not taking us seriously," Pete said quietly. "Should we start moving to avoid their weapons?" Jake shook his head. "Not yet. We need them to come closer. We need all of them to commit to attacking us." The bridge crew looked at each other with worried faces. The Liberty was one small ship against hundreds of enemies. Even if they could fight, the odds were impossible. But they trusted Jake. He had gotten them out of bad situations before. Commander Lisa Harper called from the engineering section deep in the ship. "Jake, I am seeing massive energy build up in their weapon systems. If we stay here much longer, they will be able to hit us from every direction at once." "How much longer do you need?" Jake asked. "The system needs another 2 minutes to fully charge. But if they fire before then, we might not survive long enough to use it." Jake looked at the screen showing the hegemony ships getting closer. The enemy commander was still talking, explaining how the Liberty's crew would be turned into machines and how their ship would be melted down for parts. "Your resistance serves no purpose," the hegemony voice continued. "We have defeated fleets of thousands of ships. Your single vessel cannot accomplish what entire civilizations have failed to do." Jake smiled, and for the first time, it was a real smile. "You know, you are probably right. One normal ship could not beat your whole fleet." The enemy commander paused, processing this statement. Then you acknowledge the futility of resistance? I acknowledge that a normal ship would be destroyed very quickly, Jake said. But this is not a normal ship. Behind him, Pete was watching his instruments with growing excitement. Sir, energy signatures from the enemy fleet are spiking. They are about to fire everything they have. Amy looked up from her communication station. Sir, I am picking up transmissions between their ships. They are calling us primitive and pathetic. They think this will be over in seconds. Jake nodded. The hegemony had made the same mistake as the aliens in the council meeting. They looked at the Liberty and saw only what they expected to see. A small ship with basic weapons. A target that would die quickly and quietly. They could not see what the Liberty really was because they did not understand how humans thought about war. Lisa, status report, Jake called to engineering. 95% charged, sir. The quantum field generators are almost ready. And our friends out there? They are moving into perfect position. All enemy ships will be inside the effect zone when we activate. Jake looked around his bridge one more time. His crew was ready. They had trained for this moment for months, running simulations and practicing procedures that no other ship in the galaxy could perform. The hegemony commander on the screen was still talking about surrender and conversion. It was explaining how human technology would be absorbed and improved. It was promising that resistance would only make the process more painful. But Jake was not listening anymore. He was watching Pete's tactical display as hundreds of enemy ships moved into the exact positions they needed them to be in. All ships are now within range, Pete reported. They have us completely surrounded. Perfect, Jake said quietly. The hegemony fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams and missiles flew toward the Liberty from every direction. The space around the small human ship filled with enough destructive power to crack a moon. But Jake was not worried. The real battle was about to begin, and the hegemony had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. Lisa, Jake said in a voice that carried across the entire ship, initiate Aurora Protocol. Captain Steve Parker was having a good day until the alien ships appeared. The merchant vessel New Horizons was carrying medical supplies to the outer colonies when the sensors detected 6 unknown ships approaching fast. Steve had been running cargo between Earth and the frontier worlds for 15 years, and he had never seen anything like these vessels. The ships were black and angular, shaped like hunting spears. They moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something made of metal. Steve watched them close in on his position near the Tau Ceti system and felt his mouth go dry. Captain, they are not responding to our communication attempts, reported his first officer, Dan Murphy. They are not using any known identification codes. Steve looked at his crew of 12. They were good people, mostly civilians who had signed on to see the galaxy and make some money. None of them were soldiers. The New Horizons carried only basic defensive weapons, nothing that could fight off 6 warships. Send a general distress signal, Steve ordered. Tell anyone listening that we are under attack by unknown vessels. The alien ships moved into attack formation around the New Horizons. Steve could see weapon ports opening along their hulls like hungry mouths. Then a new signal came through the communication system. It was not in any human language, but somehow Steve understood it perfectly. Human vessel, you are now prey. Prepare to be hunted. The voice was cold and emotionless, like the sound of breaking glass. Steve felt fear crawl up his spine, but he also felt something else. Anger. These aliens thought they could just attack innocent people and take whatever they wanted. This is Captain Steve Parker of the merchant vessel New Horizons, he broadcast. Back. We are on a peaceful mission carrying medical supplies. We have done nothing to threaten you. The response came quickly. You are human. That is threat enough. Your species will learn to fear the Vorthak. The first alien ship opened fire. Energy beams lanced out and struck the New Horizons, making the hull ring like a bell. The lights flickered and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Steve gripped his command chair as the ship shook under the attack. Damage report, he called. Out. "Hull breach on Deck 3, shouted Engineer Amy Rodriguez from her position at the engine controls. "But I can seal it. Main power is holding." More energy beams struck the ship. The aliens were not trying to destroy them quickly. They were playing with their prey like cats with a mouse. Steve realized these creatures enjoyed causing fear and pain. "Amy, can you give me more speed?" he asked. "I can try, but these ships are faster than us. We cannot outrun them." Steve looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were not giving up. Dan Murphy was working the weapons controls, trying to target the alien ships. Communications Officer Janet Lee was sending continuous distress signals. Medical Officer Carl Adams was helping repair damaged systems. "We may not be able to outrun them," Steve said, "but we can make them pay for this attack." The New Horizons was not a warship, but it had some advantages the aliens did not expect. Steve had been modifying his ship for years, adding hidden weapon systems and defensive measures. Pirates were common in the outer systems, and smart captains learned to protect themselves. "Dan, target their lead ship. Use the plasma torpedoes." "Sir, we only have 4 torpedoes. They have 6 ships." "Then we better make them count." The first torpedo struck the lead alien ship in the engine section. The explosion tore a hole in the black hull, and the ship began to drift. The aliens had not expected the humans to fight back with such force. Steve felt a moment of satisfaction, but it did not last long. The other alien ships increased their attack, pouring fire into the New Horizons. The hull began to buckle under the punishment. "Captain, we cannot take much more of this," Amy called from the engine room. "The main reactor is overloading." Steve made a decision that would save his crew and shock the alien attackers. "Amy, how big an explosion would we get if the reactor went critical?" There was silence on the communication channel for a moment. Then Amy's voice came back, steady and determined. "Big enough to take out anything within 5 miles, sir. Can you rig it to blow on command?" "Give me 2 minutes." Steve turned to his crew. "Everyone to the escape pods. We are abandoning ship." "Captain, what about you?" Dan asked. "Someone has to stay and make sure this works. Get everyone to the pods." "That is an order." The crew moved quickly to the escape pods. They had trained for this situation, but they never thought they would actually need to use the training. As they strapped themselves in, Steve stayed on the bridge, watching the alien ships close in for the final attack. "Amy, are you ready?" He called over the communication system. "Reactor is rigged to blow, Captain. The timer is set for 30 seconds. You better get to a pod." "Launch the pods now," Steve ordered. 12 escape pods shot away from the New Horizons like bullets from a gun. The alien ships ignored them, focusing on the main vessel. Steve could see their weapons charging for the killing blow. "Timer is at 10 seconds, Captain." Amy's voice came from her pod. "Get out of there." Steve looked at the alien ships one more time. "See you in hell," he said, and pressed the detonation button. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. The reactor's antimatter containment failed all at once, releasing energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. 2 alien ships were caught in the blast and destroyed instantly. A third ship was badly damaged and began leaking atmosphere. The remaining 3 alien ships stopped their attack and moved away from the expanding cloud of debris. In their command centers, Vorthak hunters stared at their screens in shock. Prey did not behave this way. Prey ran and hid and begged for mercy. Prey did not fight back with such determination. The escape pods were picked up 3 hours later by the Earth Defense Fleet cruiser Guardian. Captain Roy Sullivan listened to Steve Parker's report with growing concern. This was the first confirmed contact with hostile aliens, and the implications were terrifying. News of the attack spread quickly through human space. On Earth, Admiral Ben Wright called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. General Kate Foster reviewed the combat reports and shook her head. "These aliens are not pirates or raiders," she said. "This was a military operation. They specifically targeted humans and called us prey. We are dealing with a predator species." Dr. Lisa Chen studied the sensor data from the New Horizons. The alien ships used technology beyond anything humans had developed. Their weapons were more powerful, their ships were faster, and their tactics suggested they were experienced hunters. "We need to prepare for more attacks," she told the council. "If they see us as prey, they will keep coming." On his flagship, High Hunter Zarthek received reports from the hunting pack that had attacked the human vessel. 2 ships destroyed, 1 damaged, and the prey had fought back with unexpected ferocity. The humans had actually chosen death over capture. For the first time in 3,000 years, Zarthek felt something he had almost forgotten: uncertainty. These humans were different from other prey species. They did not behave according to the normal patterns. "Summon the pack leaders," he ordered. "We need to study these humans more carefully. They may prove more interesting than we first thought." The war between humanity and the Vorthak Empire had begun with a merchant ship and 12 brave souls who refused to surrender. Neither side knew it yet, but this first battle would change the galaxy forever. High Hunter Zarthek stood before the assembled pack leaders in the great chamber of his flagship. The room was dark except for the cold blue light that illuminated the star maps covering the walls. 50 of the most experienced Vorthak hunters listened as their leader spoke. "The Vorthak Empire declares humanity a worthy prey species," Zarthek announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "For too long, we have hunted weak creatures that offered no challenge. These humans have shown they will fight. They have shown they will die rather than surrender. This makes them valuable prey." The pack leaders clicked their mandibles in approval. It had been many years since they had found a species that provided real entertainment. Most civilizations either fled to the far edges of the galaxy or simply gave up when the Vorthak arrived. 50 hunting fleets will spread across human space," Zarthek continued. "Each pack leader will choose their own targets. Hunt them in, their homes, in their ships, on their worlds. Show them what it means to be prey. The great hunt begins now." The pack leaders dispersed to their ships, eager to begin the campaign. Across the galaxy, other species watched and waited. Many had hoped the humans might be different, might be able to stand against the Vorthak where others had failed. But hope was a dangerous thing when dealing with the apex predators of the galaxy. Commander Tony Blake received the warning just hours before the first Vorthak attack ships entered the Alpha Centauri system. His small patrol squadron was no match for a full hunting pack, but Tony had not survived 15 years in space by fighting fair battles. "All ships, break formation and scatter," he ordered over the communication channel. "Use hit-and-run tactics. Do not engage in direct combat." The Vorthak ships were faster and more powerful, but they expected their prey to either run away or fight a conventional battle. Tony's ships did neither. They struck quickly at the edge of weapon range, fired their missiles, and then disappeared into the asteroid field that surrounded the system. Pack leader Vorthek commanded the Vorthak hunting ships. He had destroyed dozens of species over his long career, and he expected the humans to follow the same pattern. They would panic, make mistakes, and then die screaming as all prey should. But these humans were different. They refused to engage in proper combat. They hid among the asteroids like scavengers and struck when his ships were not expecting attack. It was not honorable hunting behavior. "Find them," Vorthek ordered his subordinates. "Use the sensor nets. They cannot hide forever." But the humans seemed to know exactly how Vorthak sensors worked. They used the metal in the asteroids to hide their ships and moved in patterns that confused the tracking systems. When Vorthek's ships entered the asteroid field to search for them, the humans turned the space rocks into weapons. Tony Blake watched from his hiding spot as 2 Vorthak ships passed near a large asteroid. His engineer had spent hours placing explosive charges throughout the rock. When he triggered the detonation, the asteroid shattered into thousands of pieces that struck the alien ships like a shotgun blast. One Vorthak ship lost its main engines and began to drift. The other was damaged, but still functional. Tony smiled grimly. It was not a fair fight, but it was an effective one. The news of Tony's success spread quickly through human space. Other commanders began using similar tactics. The Vorthak found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules of proper hunting. On the colony world of New Geneva, the Vorthak hunting pack expected to find easy prey. The planet was home to mostly farmers and their families, people who had left Earth to build simple lives growing food for the outer colonies. Teacher Ellen Davis was leading her class of 30 children on a nature walk when the Vorthak ships landed. She saw the black forms moving through the forest and knew immediately that these were the aliens everyone had been talking about. The creatures moved like predators, and their yellow eyes scanned the area for victims. Ellen gathered the children clothes and whispered instructions. They were far from the main settlement, but they were not helpless. The school had a small laboratory where Ellen taught basic chemistry and biology. If she could get the children there safely, she might be able to protect them. The group moved quietly through the forest, staying hidden behind trees and rocks. Ellen could hear the Vorthak hunters calling to each other in their strange language. They were searching for human prey, but they did not expect to find anyone fighting back. At the school laboratory, Ellen worked quickly with her students. She had them gather all the chemicals and equipment they could find: cleaning supplies, laboratory acids, fertilizer from the greenhouse, anything that could be dangerous if mixed properly. "What are we making, Miss Davis?" asked 10-year-old Bobby Chen. "We are making surprises for the monsters," Ellen replied, her voice calm despite the fear she felt inside. The Vorthak hunters found the school an hour later. They expected to find cowering humans, easy prey for their claws and weapons. Instead, they found carefully placed traps made from school chemistry equipment. When the first hunter stepped through the door, his foot triggered a pressure plate that Ellen had rigged using a scale from the physics classroom. The device released a cloud of chlorine gas mixed with other chemicals that burned the alien's sensitive respiratory system. The Vorthak stumbled backward, clawing at his throat. Behind him, his packmates tried to enter the building, but Ellen had prepared more surprises. Acid splashed from containers hidden in the ceiling. Explosive devices made from fertilizer and cleaning supplies detonated in sequence. 3 of the 6 Vorthak hunters were killed or badly injured before they could retreat from the school. The survivors reported back to their pack leader that even human children were dangerous. Dr. Lisa Chen received reports from across human space about the Vorthak attacks. The pattern was always the same. The aliens expected easy prey and found determined resistance instead. Human civilians were fighting back with whatever tools they could find. Farmer Bill Thompson had turned his agricultural equipment into weapons, using pesticide sprayers to deliver acid attacks and modified harvesting machines to create deadly traps. Factory workers had converted industrial equipment into improvised artillery. Even children were finding ways to fight. "They do not understand us," Lisa told Admiral Wright during their daily briefing. "The Vorthak see us as just another prey species, but we are not behaving like their previous victims." Admiral Wright studied the battle reports on his desk. Human casualties were heavy, but the Vorthak were also taking losses. More importantly, the alien hunters seemed confused by human tactics. "What makes us different?" he asked. Lisa had been thinking about that question for weeks. Every other species the Vorthak have encountered developed naturally as either predators or prey. They have instincts that tell them how to behave when threatened. But humans evolved as both hunters and hunted. We know how to be prey, but we also know how to fight back. On his flagship, High Hunter Zarthek received reports from pack leaders across human space. The hunting was not going according to plan. Human resistance was stronger than expected, and some hunting packs were reporting significant casualties. For the first time in his long career, Zarthek began to question whether the hunt would be successful. These humans were proving to be unlike any prey species the Vorthak had encountered before. Perhaps, he thought to himself, we have finally found prey that might actually be predators. The great hunt continued, but the hunters were beginning to learn that their prey had teeth. Lieutenant Carl Adams crept through the dark corridors of the abandoned Vorthak research station. His team of 6 soldiers moved silently behind him, their weapons ready for any threat. The station orbited a dead moon in an empty star system, far from any inhabited worlds. Intelligence reports had suggested this facility was important to the Vorthak Empire. Now, after 3 months of planning, Carl's team had finally managed to infiltrate the station while its defenders were away on hunting missions. "Motion sensors show the station is empty," whispered Sergeant Linda Parker, checking her scanner. "But there are active computer systems in the central section." Carl nodded and led his team deeper into the facility. The walls were covered with the same black material as Vorthak ships, and the air carried a strange metallic smell. Everything about the place felt alien and threatening. They found the central computer chamber after 20 minutes of searching. The room was filled with strange machines that hummed with energy. Holographic displays showed star maps and data streams in the Vorthak language. "Can you access their files?" Carl asked his team's computer specialist, Frank Lopez. Frank connected his portable translation device to the Vorthak computer system. The device had been built using technology captured from destroyed alien ships. It could translate most Vorthak text, though some technical terms remained unclear. "I am getting something," Frank said after several minutes of work. "These files contain historical records going back thousands of years. This appears to be a complete archive of Vorthak expansion." Carl felt excitement building in his chest. This could be the intelligence breakthrough they needed to understand their enemy. "Download everything you can. We do not have much time before they return." As Frank worked to copy the files, Carl explored the rest of the chamber. He found physical records stored in crystalline structures that glowed with internal light. The crystals were covered with symbols that hurt his eyes to look at directly. "Sir, you need to see this," Frank called out. His voice sounded strange, almost frightened. Carl hurried over to the computer terminal where Frank was working. The screen showed a list of species names and dates. There were 43 entries, each marked with a symbol that the translator identified as extinct. "These are all the species the Vorthak have hunted," Frank explained. Every single one was completely wiped out. No survivors, no remnants, nothing left but records. Carl studied the list with growing horror. Entire civilizations had been erased from existence. Billions of lives snuffed out because the Vorthak needed something to hunt. "There is more," Frank continued. "These files contain biological data on each species. The Vorthak study their prey very carefully before they begin hunting. They learn about weaknesses, social structures, military capabilities. What do they say about humans?" Frank accessed another file and his face went pale. "According to this, we are prey species number 44. They have been studying us since first contact. They know about our military structure, our technology levels, our population centers." Carl felt a chill run down his spine. The Vorthak had been planning their attack on humanity for months, maybe years. Every move humans made had been watched and analyzed. "Keep downloading," he ordered. "We need to get this information back to Earth Command." Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Chen was working in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery. She had been studying captured Vorthak technology and biological samples for weeks, trying to understand how their enemy had become such perfect predators. Her research partner, Dr. Alan Hayes, brought her a new sample taken from a destroyed Vorthak ship. "This is interesting," he said, placing a container on her workbench. "The biological material shows signs of genetic modification." Lisa examined the sample under her microscope. The cellular structure was unlike anything she had seen before. The DNA was too perfect, too organized. Natural evolution produced random variations and imperfections. This genetic code looked like it had been designed. How extensive are the modifications? She asked. From what I can tell, the entire Vorthak genome has been rewritten. Enhanced. Muscle density, improved reflexes, modified sensory organs, strengthened bone structure. Someone turned them into living weapons. Lisa sat back in her chair, thinking about the implications. If they were modified, then they were not always apex predators. Someone made them this way. The question is who, Alan replied. And why? The answer came when Carl Adams returned from his mission to the research station. The files his team had stolen contained information that changed everything humans thought they knew about the Vorthak Empire. Dr. Chen and her team worked around the clock to translate and analyze the captured data. What they found shocked them to their core. The Vorthak had not evolved naturally as apex predators. They had been created by an ancient species called the Architects. According to these records, Dr. Chen explained to Admiral Wright and the Defense Council, the Architects were a highly advanced civilization that existed over 10,000 years ago. They created the Vorthak as biological weapons to protect their empire from other species. What happened to these Architects? Asked General Foster. The Vorthak killed them, Dr. Chen replied. The genetic programming that made them perfect. Hunters also made them compulsively aggressive toward any species that showed rapid technological development. When the Architects reached a certain level of advancement, their own weapons turned against them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vorthak were not evil by choice. They were programmed to hunt and kill, unable to change their nature because of genetic locks built into their DNA. There is more, Dr. Chen continued. The genetic programming prevents the Vorthak from adapting beyond their current form. They cannot evolve or change like natural species. They are powerful, but they are also limited. Admiral Wright leaned forward in his chair. What does this mean for our war against them? It means they have a weakness, Dr. Chen said. They cannot adapt to new situations the way humans can. Their responses are programmed and predictable. If we can understand their programming, we might be able to defeat them. On the Vorthak flagship, young sub-hunter Ketharn stood before his pack leader with his head bowed in shame. His hunting mission to the human colony of New Boston had been a complete failure. 3 of his pack members were dead, and the humans had escaped. Explain your failure, demanded pack leader Morthek. The humans did not behave like proper prey, Ketharn replied. They set traps for us. They used weapons we did not expect. When we cornered them, they fought instead of running. Morthek's claws extended in anger. All prey runs when faced with superior predators. It is the natural order. But these humans do not follow the natural order, Ketharn said quietly. They fight like predators, not like prey. For the first time in his young life, Ketharn began to question the teachings of his elders. If humans were prey, why did they act like hunters? If the Vorthak were apex predators, why were they losing so many battles? These questions would have been considered heresy by older Vorthak, but Ketharn could not stop thinking about them. Something was wrong with the way his people understood the universe. Back on Earth, Dr. Chen made another breakthrough. Hidden deep in the Architect files was information about the genetic locks that controlled Vorthak behavior. The same technology that made them perfect hunters also made them vulnerable to specific frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. If we can broadcast the right signal, she explained to her team, we might be able to disrupt their genetic programming. We might be able to free them from their compulsion to hunt. The war was about to take a dramatic new direction. Humanity had discovered that their greatest enemy was also a victim, trapped by programming they could not escape. The question now was whether humans would choose revenge or redemption. The silence that followed Captain Morrison's question stretched across space like a heavy blanket. On the 3 hegemony ships, crews sat at their stations trying to understand what had just happened to them. Their most powerful warships had been made helpless by a single human vessel that should have been no match for them. Admiral Vextar sat in his darkened command chair on the disabled flagship. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the bridge. His proud warship, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was now floating helplessly in space like a piece of expensive junk. "Admiral," whispered Commander Zarek, "our engineering teams report that all main systems are completely dead. The backup power can only support life support and basic communications. Everything else will need to be completely rebuilt." "How long?" Admiral Vextar asked quietly. "At least 6 months, sir. Maybe longer. The human weapon did something to our systems that our engineers have never seen before. It is as if every circuit has been reset to zero." Admiral Vextar closed his eyes. 6 months. His flagship would be in a repair dock for half a year because of one human ship. The shame would follow him for the rest of his career. On the second hegemony ship, Captain Yoxri was having similar thoughts. His weapons officer had confirmed that their targeting systems were completely useless. Every time they tried to lock onto the human ship, their computers showed error messages they had never seen before. "Captain," his science officer reported, "I have been analyzing the energy signatures from the human vessel. The readings do not match anything in our databases. It is as if they are using principles of physics that we do not understand." "That is impossible," Captain Yoxri replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "We have studied physics for thousands of years. We understand how energy and matter work." "Yes, sir," the science officer agreed. "But this human ship is doing things that our physics say cannot be done. Either our understanding is incomplete, or the humans have discovered something entirely new." On the third hegemony ship, Commander Nixera was staring at the remains of his supercannon. The weapon that had taken 5 years to build and had cost more than a small planet was now completely worthless. His weapons officer had tried everything, but the focusing crystals had been changed at a level so small that they could not be repaired. "Commander," his engineering chief reported over the communication system, "the damage to the supercannon is unlike anything we have ever seen. The crystals have not been destroyed. They have been changed. Every molecule has been moved to a slightly different position. It would be easier to build a completely new weapon than to fix this one." Commander Nixara felt a cold fear in his stomach. "Chief, is this type of damage even possible with known technology?" "No, sir," the engineering chief replied honestly. "What was done to our weapon requires technology that is centuries beyond anything we know about. Maybe thousands of years beyond." Back on the Liberty, Captain Morrison was watching the alien ships through his view screen. He could see that they were talking among themselves, probably trying to decide what to do next. He felt sorry for them, but this lesson had been necessary. "Nemesis," he said quietly, "what is the current status of the hegemony fleet?" "All 3 vessels are effectively neutralized, Captain," the AI replied. "The flagship is completely disabled. The second ship has working engines and life support, but no effective weapons. The third ship is fully operational except for their primary weapon system, which has been permanently damaged." "Are they still a threat to us?" "No, Captain. Even working together, the remaining 2 ships cannot penetrate our defenses or cause significant damage to the Liberty. However, they do have enough firepower to threaten other human vessels if they encounter any." Morrison nodded. That was something he needed to think about. The Liberty was special, but most human ships were still vulnerable to hegemony weapons. "Captain Morrison," came a weak voice over the communication system. It was Admiral Vexitar, calling from his disabled flagship. "I wish to speak with you." "I'm listening, Admiral," Morrison replied. "What you have done here today, it changes everything. The hegemony has ruled this part of space for over 1,000 years. We have conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated every enemy we have faced. But we have never encountered anything like your ship." Admiral Vextar paused, and Morrison could hear the defeat in his voice. "I must ask you a question, Captain. How many ships like the Liberty does humanity possess?" Morrison smiled, even though the alien could not see it. This was the question he had been waiting for. The answer would determine whether today's lesson prevented future conflicts or started a larger war. Admiral, that information is classified, Morrison replied. But I will tell you this much. The Liberty is not alone out here. Humanity learned long ago that it is better to be prepared for trouble than to hope trouble never comes. This was mostly a lie. The Liberty was currently the only AI-enhanced warship in the human fleet, but Admiral Vextar did not need to know that. Furthermore, Morrison continued, the technology you have seen today represents just the beginning of human defensive capabilities. We have been planning for this type of encounter since we first made contact with galactic civilization. From the second hegemony ship, Captain Yoxery joined the conversation. Captain Morrison, if your species possesses such advanced technology, why did you not reveal it during the initial contact negotiations? Because we are not conquerors, Captain, Morrison replied. We came to space to explore and learn, not to dominate others. But we also came prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. Today was the first time that defense was required. Morrison walked closer to his view screen, making sure all three alien commanders could see him clearly. Gentlemen, I want you to understand something very important. What happened here today was not an attack. It was a demonstration. We could have destroyed all three of your ships in the first few seconds of this encounter. Instead, we chose to disable them without harming your crews. He let that information sink in before continuing. This was not because we are weak or merciful. It was because we prefer peace to war. But make no mistake about our capabilities. If the hegemony chooses to escalate this conflict, the next encounter will not end with disabled ships and embarrassed commanders. Admiral Vexatar felt a chill run through his body. Are you threatening us, Captain? No, Admiral, Morrison replied calmly. I am educating you. There is a difference between a threat and a promise. Today was education. If we meet again under hostile circumstances, that will be a promise being kept. Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez looked up from his tactical station. Captain, the second and third hegemony ships are moving into formation. It looks like they might be preparing for another attack. Morrison sighed. He had hoped the aliens would be smart enough to accept the lesson and leave peacefully. Apparently, some people had to learn things the hard way. Nemesis, he said quietly, are you ready to provide another demonstration if necessary? Always. Ready, Captain, the AI replied. Shall I prepare a more convincing argument? Morrison looked at the alien ships on his screen. They were brave, he had to give them that. Stupid, but brave. Not yet, Nemesis. Let's give them one more chance to make the right decision.